You're listening to Delay of Game,
a sports talk podcast. On Facebook.com/delayofgame and on Twitter at DLG_podcast.
All right, welcome in to a Delay of Game podcast special in which we are calling this Guest Work with a guest feature. This is a separate podcast, as of course you can figure out from the regular show. That is, I'm Ryan Swanigan. Glad to have you along, and joining us on the first edition here of Guest Work on Delay of Game is why not an old voice, an old familiar voice, and an old friend, Doug Lowery, joining us.
It's an old voice, Ryan. I mean, I'm older than all of you. I'll take my lumps. It's an old voice.
No, I don't think you're an old voice, Doug. You're a familiar voice, an old friend. How about that?
Sure, we'll go with that.
No, you're not an old friend. You're still my friend. I don't know what we're getting at with this here, anyways. Doug Lowery joining us here for this podcast special, Guest Work, and quite a few topics to discuss here with Doug. And Mr. Lowery, will begin with your most recent blog post about Husker football, and that was how Patrick O'Brien, who begins classes on Monday, that's tomorrow, Monday, January the 11th, he is now also beginning an era of his life in which he could possibly decide the future of his current head coach, Mike Riley, and you go on to list some reasons why. But just tell us about that article that you wrote.
Yeah, so just in being a your regular follower of football, maybe a little bit more obsessive than most people, but it's just become more and more evident the older and older I've got that having a quarterback, not even a star quarterback, but a quarterback that you can count on, a quarterback that throws for a good amount of touchdowns and a littler amount of interceptions, has a good completion percentage, those types of things, just is always going to lead to more team success than not. And when I wrote this, I shared it with our good mutual friend John Kipper, and he said, well, Doug, you're making it sound like that's the only factor. And I said, well, it's supposed to sound like that. It's supposed to, the way I wrote it, it's supposed to sound like the only way Mike Riley keeps his job is if Patrick O'Brien, is successful. And it's not necessarily true, but I think it has some very truthful elements to it. And when you think about it, not having a quarterback has unseated a lot of very, very prominent coaches. Mm-hmm. It's the reason a lot of teams succeed or don't. And I think, John made a good point. What if they get an even better recruit next year? And then that's the kid. Well, that's not the point. The point is that a quarterback is always going to be the reason a team sinks or floats. And then he said, well, what about Bo Pelini? I said, well, Bo Pelini, that's just, a terrible case of he didn't get along with folks, and that's a different situation. But really, when it comes down to it, and I did a little bit of research with statistics, the top 12 teams in the College Football Playoff Committee rankings all had quarterbacks that were pretty darn efficient and successful. No more, actually, and this shocked me, than Baker Mayfield for Oklahoma, who threw 36 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and completed 68.1% of his passes in the pass-happy Big 12. So it's tough. If you don't have one, it's just. I thought it was just an interesting lens. The way it worked out, that it was, a week from the day. Tomorrow he starts classes, and that's really when, over the next 4 or 5 years, it's gonna be on him, and it's gonna be his job to sink or swim. And it's I've watched his highlight tape. I've read what scouts say. It's really an interesting way to look at it, and to think kind of into the future and look into the future and say this is the point right here where this young man's career is starting, and this career is going to affect so much of what goes on in the future of Nebraska football.
Yeah, and Doug, honestly, I was at first of course, I always have an immediate initial reaction, and then I was, I guess, kind of disagreeing, or I was uncertain about your article, and then I read the whole thing, and then I was like, you're kind of right there, Doug. That's essentially kind of how it goes with Patrick O'Brien for Nebraska, and because Tommy Armstrong has only, I don't really know if he can do any more than he's done. It's certainly possible. I hope it's possible that he improves even more from what we have seen this past season in year one under Riley, because next year that's going to be it for him, for Tommy Armstrong. It's going to be his final season. He'll be the starter and all that. But it's more so, I guess, after that season, because it is a gauntlet schedule, especially on the road. But moving into the following season, that too is also just as much of a gauntlet, and then that's the season in which, or so we think as of right now, Patrick O'Brien will be taking the snaps, ideally, under center for Nebraska at quarterback, in Eugene, Oregon, against Ohio State at Memorial Stadium, against Wisconsin at Memorial Stadium, on the road against Michigan in Ann Arbor and Jim Harbaugh. It's seemingly such a very difficult thing for him to do well. But then I have to think back to it, and it's like, well, then how are we going to be able to determine if Mike Riley stays or not based on just one season with Patrick O'Brien at Nebraska, though? Go ahead.
My point is more, I would give until Patrick O'Brien's either redshirt junior year or senior year. That would be the year you decide. You've got to see progression in a quarterback. Because quarterbacks can't come in. They're not all, Johnny Manziel did things in his freshman year that people just don't do. And it's part of why he was the Heisman and part of why he was drafted so high. Because he did things intangibly that other people didn't do. But when you look at, some of the top quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson, Jacob Coker, Connor Cook, Baker Mayfield, C.J. Beathard, Kevin Hogan, even J.T. Barrett, you have to see, those are the top 7 quarterbacks of the top 7 teams in the College Football Playoff Committee. Those guys all have progressed year by year, and it's just one of those things where Riley is going to have to get, he's going to have to get O'Brien playing at a high level, or a decently high level, and then just keep making it better and better each year. Now, this is all to say, Tommy can have a great year next year, and that'll be a good feather in Mike Riley's cap, but it's not something he can look back at. If Patrick O'Brien falls on his face, Mike Riley can't go to Eichhorst and say, well, look, I did okay with Tommy Armstrong that one time. That's not why Mike Riley was brought here. He was brought here to recruit and develop his own talent.
Exactly.
And so that was my, Armstrong can have a good year next year, and it'll be fine. And there's no way to point at what he did this past year, which was 22 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, and a 55.2 completion percentage rating. Playing quarterback doesn't happen in a vacuum. You can't just look at Tommy and say, well, that's all his fault. It's Tommy. Tommy is the only reason he only threw for 22 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, and 55.5% completion rating.
Right.
It has to do with offensive line play, running. The running ratio and the amount that they were able to do play action. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not just on Tommy in that situation. But there can't be many games where a quarterback, and this happened in back-to-back weeks for Illinois and Wisconsin, Armstrong threw for 32.3% completion and 39.3%. That was versus Illinois and Wisconsin, who weren't two of the hard. I mean, Wisconsin has a good defense, but Illinois and Wisconsin are definitely not two of the hardest games that Nebraska played this year, and that is just not good enough completion percentage-wise.
And looking forward to, and this is something that we just talked about on the podcast today, the regular show for Delay of Game. Doug Lowery joining us here on guest work. it's the fact that you have to have a little patience as far as having coaches get a chance to establish themselves. So let's say the scenario that I just said with Armstrong, Tommy Armstrong Jr. does his normal thing next season, and now it's Patrick O'Brien's turn in 2017. And it's a rough year because it's his first year playing in actual real games against very good and quality opponents, and the fans don't like that. But the fact of the matter, too, is, and I don't know if you put this in, I can't remember if you put this in your article or not, Doug, is that you got to have patience if you're trying to work to build toward building something up. Like for example, the Cleveland Browns, they don't know what that is. They haven't done that. They haven't tried to work to build something up. They just continue to put a block on at the base of the foundation, and then they take it off and they put a different one on, and they don't like how that looks, and then they take that off and they put another one. That's how you're not supposed to go about managing a football team, whether it be college or pro. And I think that's a scenario that Husker fans, as very difficult as it is for them to understand, have to get, in that it takes time to build things up, especially when you're starting over at the college level every 3 and sometimes 2 in the 2 to 4 year window. You're starting with a brand new quarterback who has to learn your system.
Well, and the best way I've heard it put is, nobody likes road work when it's happening, but everyone likes driving on nice roads.
Exactly.
And that is exactly the point I make when people say, well, he's not successful yet. It doesn't look good yet. Well, he was in year one, and you're not going to like the way it looks. They're not rebuilding. They're just building what they're trying to make and make this program back into. And they're trying to do it the right way and set it on principles. And we're going to see more kids. We're going to see more, student athletes that are going to transfer after this season. Mike Riley said it. There are going to be guys who don't want to be here anymore. And so it's tough. Nobody, I'm doing the same thing with my Bears right now. Nobody likes the road work, but everyone likes it when the road is smooth. Everyone likes driving on nice, repaved roads.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's going to take a little while to get this thing running. And I can't remember who it was. I heard it was some former quarterback I heard on a radio station, and he said, you have to give college coaches 5 years plus or minus 1. Mm-hmm. That is how long they need, because to get a group of people in that are running your system, that basically are, come in and they only learn your language, basically is the way it should be said. Tommy Armstrong had to unlearn everything in the old offense to relearn a new one. Mm-hmm. And the offense that Mike Riley and Danny Langsdorff brought in wasn't really adjusted for a mobile quarterback. Now that's not a big deal, and they'll figure it out. These are smart guys. They, if anything, if you could look at Langsdorff's play calling ability and the way they ran that game versus UCLA, that should point to, hey, look, they can do things right and they can figure this out.
Exactly.
I do want to say also in this though is when you think about it, and this is just as important as O'Brien having success, is making sure that their quarterback doesn't have success. And so that is your pass rush and your, pass defense. Mm-hmm. More times than not, you're going to be able to moderately stop the run. That's usually you're going to be in the middle somewhere. As long as you have top-tier recruits playing on your defense, you don't have to be the number one run-stopping team in the nation, but if you've got good guys that can stop the passer, they're going to be versatile enough usually that you'll fall somewhere in the middle of stopping the run, which is where you want to be. But stopping the pass, stopping the ability for Brad Kaya to just throw all over you in the first quarter, or stopping the ability for Connor Cook to throw all over you to whoever it is, to whoever his receivers are, because he's done it with multiple. That is also going to be the other benchmark that is going to be held against Riley is, can you get to their passer and not let them pass for 350, 400 yards a game?
Exactly.
We saw at times. So, it's those two things. It's, can can you disrupt the pass, and can you yourself go back out onto the field and pass?
Doug Lowery joining us here on this Delay of Game podcast special guest work. Doug, of course, you know Nebraska men's basketball so well. It's very near and dear to your heart ever since you and John Kipper got to call the first basketball game ever at Pinnacle Bank Arena, and so many other memorable games over the 2 years that
Right,
you were
you
there.
might give me more credit than that, baby. I was there since the year 2009 season. I went to almost every game at the Devaney.
Oh, fair enough.
It's been since before that. I mean, I've seen them beat the likes of Texas and come close to beating Kansas. Within 15 points was coming close to beating Kansas at that point. But, I lived through the Doc era. I lived, for a lot of the Doc era, the Brian Jorge Diaz era.
Brian Diaz.
Jorge, whatever, yeah. I lived through quite a bit of bad Nebraska basketball, and the reason I'm so up on it is because I was front and center, and you and I were doing pregame shows every single game.
Of course.
For that season that they went to the NCAA tournament for the first time since God knows when. And
in the 90s.
Sure. And so it became very near and dear to my heart, and I love this team just as much as I've loved any team in the past.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm going to associate Pinnacle Bank Arena with you because, we did so much work there, and you were essentially there all the time for every game. And I want to talk about this team right now because I feel like there's a lot of criticism that is going towards this team that is totally undeserved because, again, going back to another theme for college sports here that we've already just discussed and we'll discuss again here for basketball, is there is a rebuilding phase going on right now for this team. They have two seniors, a transfer equivalent of a junior in Andrew White III, who is doing unbelievable work for this team right now, by the way. And everybody else is a freshman, except for Ty Webster, of course. He's also a junior now, and he's finally slowly developing and becoming the player that we've been waiting for him to be for quite some time. But everybody else is a freshman here, Doug, and this team is getting criticized. And I understand. I know what I can see where the criticism is coming from. They run out of gas towards the end of games. They're not finishing them out. They don't have a decent rebounder. They are not as consistent in being able to shoot the ball and make buckets when the situation counts on them doing that. But this team is shooting 45% from the field overall, Doug. That is so much better. Last year, this team was shooting 32 from the field and under 30 from beyond the arc, and right now they're 37 from beyond the arc. Now, they do need to do a better job of shooting free throws. They're at 71%, but they're averaging 73, almost 74 points per game, and they're getting criticized. I don't understand it.
Here's the thing is, and I'm going to throw another metaphor at you, but if you don't have the horses, you can't run the Kentucky Derby.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be in that level of horse racing. You can run, whatever small town little races you want to run, but you can't run the Kentucky Derby. You're not going to be in with the big dogs in that race. And it has never been more evident that the Huskers are a big man away from being solid.
Yes.
But the problem is Tim Miles went out and tried his darndest to recruit a big man. None of them chose here. That's just the way it is. None of them decided to come here.
Mm-hmm.
And he, you never thought you'd say 6'10" isn't big enough in basketball.
Yeah.
But these days it's not, especially when Jake Hammond is a string bean. I mean, the kid's just not he's not built.
Exactly.
And that's not an indictment against the kid. It's just he's not that big of a kid, and I don't know if he'll ever get to there because it just, from one year to the next, you see him become more muscular, but he's just not the size of, the Jared Sullingers of past.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not his it's not the way he's going to play. I mean, if there was ever a time where you thought, man, I would even take Andre Almeida at this point, like a guy who was just all Andre Almeida was is he was a bouncer for the lane. If you wanted in the lane, he was going to decide whether or not you got to be there.
Exactly.
He was just that big of a kid. He wasn't really an offensive threat. He was just kind of a guy to sit, flop in the middle of the lane, and make decisions on whether or not to foul hard or just to foul. And if there's ever been a time where that could be more useful, it's now. But that's not how it's going to go. I mean, there's just not a guy on this team to make that happen. And we all saw this past year this great rise of the Golden State Warriors, who do have Andrew Bogut, but they play a lot of small lineups, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we say, oh my goodness, the Huskers can do this. It's not going to be a problem, Definitely, Ed Moreau is big enough to play that 5 if they go small, or Michael Jacobson, or I'm sure we all thought it was Jake Hammond back, all that time ago. Oh, he's plenty big enough if we want to play small.
Mm-hmm.
And it just hasn't, the chemistry hasn't worked. Now we just saw, I thought I was going to come in here and talk all upset and mad and sad and not happy at this team, but then they come out yesterday and they score, 90-something points?
They dropped 90 on Rutgers, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Rutgers is
Rutgers.
equally as bad or worse than we are, and they have some injuries right now.
Yeah,
so,
and they can't beat an NIAA team either, so.
Sure, and so maybe that's not a great benchmark, but hey, they beat them by a lot, and they did what they were supposed to. They never played down to their opponent. They always played the level of basketball they wanted to play, which was good to see.
Yeah.
But it's gotta be that kind of effort, that Herculean type effort, shooting the ball. I mean, Andrew White, I think in the first half was 90% shooting efficiency, which is unheard of.
Exactly.
Just unreal in modern college basketball. I think maybe Ryan Arcidiacono from Villanova had a game like that, a first half like that recently. I feel like that happened maybe versus Creighton. I think he had a really, really good game shooting the ball, but it's tough to have shooters be that consistently. Now, what the Huskers are also doing well are two other things. They're driving to the basket, which they seem to be doing and just not getting calls in the past, but they're also driving to the basket and then dumping the ball off to a player who's become open after a defender got drawn to that drive.
Which is something we did not see much of at all last year because it was the Turan Petaway show. No,
and to a degree you have to be okay with that, though. I mean, Turan earned it, and he was the only guy. I mean, he was. The only real issue I had from last year to this year is that Terrence Smith left, which, if the kid wants to go home, I'm not going to blame him, but I look at his ability and his athleticism, and that on this team could have been crucial. It could have been pretty great. Still not another big body, but it's another piece you could have added to a rotation.
Right.
But, the rise of Benny Parker as an offensive threat, you have Ty Webster playing at a career best right now, and, Ed Moreau's coming along. Hammond is all right. Michael Jacobson shocking a lot of people with his play.
Oh, yeah. Your boy, Glenn Watson, yeah.
Glenn Watson is just out of his mind at some points in games, just doing things that you just don't think his little body should be able to do.
Exactly. That beautiful reverse against Indiana. Oh, my goodness. The whole place went crazy when that happened.
It's a fun team to watch. I'm sure they're still going to do a good job of crowding the Pinnacle Bank Arena, but it's just one of those things where they're going to have to work this and work the system in their favor to keep kind of figuring out little things that work. If at times Michael Jacobson and Ed Moreau have to be in there and they have to play some sort of double team on a really good low post player, that might have to be what it is, and have the other guys, have to cover 4, have 3 guys have to cover 4, but you just can't see what we saw versus, I think it was Northwestern with that low post young man, I can't remember his name, who just took over the game for Northwestern. I mean,
yeah.
Topic. It It was just run down the court, set up your half-court offense, feed it into the block, and he's going to do what he does. You can't have that. And that, again, is just like, if you can marginally stop the three-point shot. You can let them shoot 28, 32% from three-point. But if they can just throw it into the paint and have that guy go at it every single possession, time after time. I mean, I honestly don't know if I'm going to watch the Purdue game because I'm afraid of what A.J. Hammond is going to do to this defense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Not just A.J. Hammond, but everybody else that's 7 foot and higher on that team. It's just they're just going to go off.
Isn't one of them named Swanigan?
Caleb Swanigan, yes.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough. No relation.
That's one of those games where it's just like, I'm just going to sit there. I'm going to watch it because I am who I am and I love this team, but I'm just going to sit there and cringe for most of the game, thinking to myself, holy cow, I wish I didn't have to deal with watching this.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like there's nothing. There's no way to explain it besides they're just helpless because they just don't have a guy who's going to match up. It's just not going to work. Unless they want to put Benny Parker down there because versus Indiana, he played a great possession of defense versus a big.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it. It's amazing watching him use his leverage versus big guys.
Well, I think it's because he's so short that and his defender is so tall that he's at the ball level. The ball is right there in front of his face, so he doesn't have to worry about, keeping eye to eye with the defender. He just is watching the basketball and where it's moving around, and if he knows where it's going to go, that's his cue to just start diving in there, knocking it loose, get a steal, something like that.
Well, it's his leverage, his ability to get under people.
Yeah, that too.
That has always helped him. I mean, that's obviously not realistic. They're not going to make Benny Parker guard a big guy.
Oh, of course not.
There's just not a lot I can point at and say, that's very good proof that they're going to have success versus another big guy. It's not going to happen. It's going to be tough the rest of the season. You got to hope that eventually that help is on the way. I know I would be very certain that Tim Miles is going to go out and hit this JUCO recruiting very hard in search of any big guy with any capability whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I agree. By the way, Derek Pardon, the Northwestern player you were thinking of, who just went crazy. 28-12. It's unbelievable. Finally, Doug, of course, Doug Lowery joining us, reporter from Northeast Nebraska. Every month, Doug will be joining Delay of Game, whether it be a part of the regular show or part of the side podcast, the podcast special guest work, to discuss the month in stupid. And this was Doug's idea, of course, and I said, why not? So, Doug, I will let you explain the month in stupid and what it is.
Well, every month we will keep tally of people who do dumb things. And then Ryan and I will both bring in our two best picks for the stupidest people that month. Now, these don't have to include sports figures. It can be anyone with prominence or anyone who has gained prominence through being excessively stupid. But more or less, the idea is we're going to crown the dumbest person of each month, and maybe at the end of the year, we will have a Stupid of the Year award. I don't know if we can send them this award or how this will work, but we will have a Stupid of the Month for the next 12 months, I'm sure, and we will go from there. And so, Ryan, why don't you kick us off? We can start with your first nominee for Stupid Person of the Month.
Yes, and by the way, as a disclaimer, we already have a winner chosen. Matt Rigby and Brent Bonfleur were unable to join me and Doug for this. So we had Brent Bonfleur decide before we did this recording, and so we know who the winner is. But
we're going to make our case.
Yes, exactly.
With gusto.
Oh, of course. To begin, and this is, of course, very fitting for the first ever feature on this podcast, The Month in Stupid, that Johnny Manziel be a part of this. And it's so timely, too, because Johnny Manziel missed the regular season finale for the Cleveland Browns because I think he wasn't injured, or was he suspended? I think he was injured.
He hadn't cleared concussion protocol.
Right. Okay. So Manziel was dealing with a concussion issue, and it was multiple reports. One of them said that he was in Las Vegas. Another one said that he was in Las Vegas disguised as who knows what. Another one came out later saying that he was pulled over as part of a traffic stop in Ohio the morning of the game that he missed. And then the next day he was back with the Cleveland Browns taking part in something. Doug says this is a young, stupid thing. I think this is just a continuation of Johnny Manziel's stupid stuff that is not at the level of, Alden Smith stupid, or Greg Hardy stupid, or Ray Rice stupid. This is a different type of stupid in which this is Johnny Manziel saying, I'll do what I want. And he goes out and he does exactly that. And if he wants to party, he's going to want to party.
Here would be my case for young stupid. If it is in fact true that he was in Las Vegas wearing some sort of disguise, and people say it was a wig and a mustache, I believe, and that he was saying that he had to show them his ID to get into the casino, and apparently the pit boss or whoever says, "Oh, we got Johnny Manziel with us tonight," and he goes, "No, my name's Billy," If if that is actually what happened, which it's not confirmed that that's what happened,
right?
If that is what happened, that is the most blatant case of young stupid in Johnny Manziel's young career of being dumb, because it takes that kind of youthful naivete to say I can put on a wig and a mustache and get away with this, even though people know me because I won the Heisman and I've been in the news and
in a commercial too,
and not having to think ahead to the fact that you have to show someone your ID and that it'll become chatter. That is young stupid. Now, if it's this whole he got pulled over thing, or if it's just that he went out in Vegas and there was no disguise, that is just on another level of plain stupid.
Yeah.
But if there was actually a disguise worn, that is the definition of someone being young stupid.
See, I just lump it all together as stupid at this point for Manziel, given his track record. It's ultimately just pathetic. You want me to go to my second one, or you want to do your first one?
I'll take over. Yeah,
you got your first one.
We'll back and forth. So my first one is going to be recent from last night. It worked out. Me and you were talking about this, and we didn't want to have any overlap of our picks.
Right.
And so I had you tell me yours, and I picked my two off of that. And, I'm sitting there last night thinking, oh, man, who am I going to pick? And I'm watching the Bengals play the Steelers, and the game is getting chippy and things are going on, but no one had really earned it yet until, and that's the key point in all of this, Vontaze Burfict with 18, maybe 20 seconds left, threw a late hit, shoulder pad to head of Antonio Brown on a pass that Antonio Brown didn't even catch. And so he gets my first nod for stupid in this case. But then afterwards, and it's not known right now whether or not the flag should have been called on Adam Pac-Man Jones, or I think his name is Gillsbury, I think is his name, is a defensive end for the Bengals, both of which were arguing with referees about the late hits on Antonio Brown and got another 15-yard penalty, putting the Steelers into game-winning field goal range to lose the first round of the playoffs. And I can't think of a better example for you're being dumb than losing your team, not losing a playoff game, being the only reason that your team, especially the Bengals, lost a playoff game. That is just a next level of stupid, and that is literally in the game. We're not talking about speeding on the highway having weed in your car and possessing a firearm. We're talking about in-game stupidity, which is rare that we actually get to talk about because it's usually off the court stuff or off the field stuff. But that level of stupidity won one of my nominations for stupidity in the art of on-field play. That is in that realm. That is my first pick overall for this month in stupid.
And a very good one, too, by the way, if I may say.
Well, it fell into my lap, really.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. So the next one that we have here is from me, and this one has been going on for,
It's my favorite. It's my favorite by far.
I don't know how long this has been going on. I work for a news organization, so I have been following this closely. We've had this not in my newscast, but in a couple of other newscasts, and it's just to that point where it's like, okay, can we just put Ethan Couch in jail and just get it over with? and can we do something with his mom too? Maybe put her in jail for a little bit.
She's in jail.
Oh yeah. So okay. So so that's one down.
You didn't hear this one?
I must not.
His mother. Okay, so I'll let you finish, and then I'll explain what's going on with him.
Okay, yeah, I'll go up to the point that in which I don't know. So Tanya Couch, the mother of the quote-unquote affluenza teen named Ethan Couch, decided that it would be a good idea to get her son out of the country, given the fact that there was a video floating around on Twitter of her son at a party where there was alcohol and beer pong and all sorts of crazy, wild stuff, because that's what happens at parties. That was floating around Twitter, and so she just decided, well, I need to probably get my son out of here and out of the country because he probably has violated something of some sort, and so he's going to be disciplined, but he can't be disciplined. You know, it's not right for the poor boy. So let's just get out of here and go to Mexico. So that's what they did. There was a warrant out for his arrest, her arrest, and I don't know how long this went on for, maybe almost a month or so. They finally found them both in Mexico. The mother got extradited. I don't even know where the kid is. He's probably still living it up in a jail cell in Mexico, maybe. Who knows what's going on with him? But I am not certain if he is back yet or not, but just the fact that they were discovered to leave for Mexico, it's like, no, you might want to try it a little farther south, maybe, South America or, something that's not really on par with social media, exactly, You know what I mean?
When you are claiming that you're too rich to know better, you got to have the money and the smarts to make it to a country that doesn't have extradition laws.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been the way to go. You gotta flee to Mexico and then fly to Spain or something. I forget. There's countries in Europe that won't extradite criminals.
Russia.
Well, Russia definitely. Russia wouldn't send them to us. Russia would say, hey, now they're feeding our economy. Thanks. The funnier part in all of this is the actual defense of affluenza, which is a lot absurd. And I think it's almost funny that you could plausibly say that could be a reason this kid didn't know better, but you can't say it in the court of law. I mean, you could use this that kind of reasoning for a kid not wanting to share his crayons in preschool or something. He just doesn't know better. He's got 800 crayons at home that are all his, and he doesn't know to share. But you can't say, well, he didn't know better than to not drink and drive because he's been rich and poor.
Exactly.
So it's kind of funny because it's the quote unquote affluenza reasoning is used in common language and understanding of oh, he just doesn't know any better. But you can't use it in a court of law. I mean, that's not how that works.
Exactly.
The funnier part is the mom got extradited to L.A., and then she got extradited from L.A. back to Texas, where she faced charges of aiding and abetting a probation, helping break probation.
Exactly.
Which isn't going to carry a very big sentence. But there are reports out that she is not happy with the current. She's not happy with how the jail cell she's currently in looks. She doesn't like the jail. She's not a fan of it.
Oh.
And that's the one that I think is just hilarious.
Okay, that is hilarious. It's dumb and it's hilarious at the same time.
That might be what puts it over the edge for me with her. Is just it goes from a gut chuckle, just a little bit of a laugh, to like a full blown can't breathe. I'm laughing at how dumb this person is.
See, I didn't know that. I didn't read that part. But
no, yeah, that one.
That's really good.
I'm not a fan of my jail cell. I wish there was more potpourri. The toilet paper isn't to my liking. It's like
the drapings there are no drapings. I need drapings put up, please, with a fancy curtain rod. Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
these people believe that their son was innocent. Essentially, that the affluenza is what went over and that he didn't really kill those 4 people back in 2013, 2014, whatever it was. And it's just like, your son killed 4 people. It doesn't you can't break it down any further than that sentence right there. Your son killed 4 people. That's it.
Ryan, I will say this, though. If you're going to fight this kind of charge, it's not the worst argument. I mean, it's a terrible argument. It's a dumb argument, but it's not the worst argument I've ever heard. I mean, if you're going to argue anything for why this happened, it's stupid, but you kind of say it's stupid, and it almost stupidly in its dumbest way makes sense. I mean, there's no defense for a young man driving drunk and killing 4 of his friends. Ever. There's not a defense for it.
Underage drinking.
But if you're going to try to defend yourself, this isn't the dumbest argument you could make. It's not. There's a lot of stupider things you could say.
Right.
It's stupid in the fact that it's not entirely plausible. It's stupid in the fact that, you shake your head and say, no, that's not a real thing. But if you're trying to prove something, it's not the dumbest. I mean, you could say a lot dumber things, and it's hard to think that you could, but you can. But yeah, this saga of events has just been a showcase in the stupid.
Oh, absolutely. Finally, before we get to the winner, time for Doug's second choice for the month in stupid.
Oh, we're going to go back to the sports world. And this person is a repeat offender, which is hard to think that a man with the wisdom of a 61-year-old, could be this dumb. But Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Cleveland Browns, time and time again, has proven his worth in gold in stupid. Just as you said earlier, never willing to really settle with a foundation for his team or his program or whatever, or his franchise, I guess is how you say it.
They put the cinder block on top of the foundation to begin the frame, the rest of the frame. They don't like it. They take it off. They put a different one on. They don't like that. And it's just continuously putting one cinder block on, taking it off, and repeat.
No. I mean, this has been a pattern of stupid. He's a low-level stupid. He's guilty of low-level stupid for a long time. And it's his money. It's not like he's the GM and he keeps making bad choices. He's making choices with his own money. Let him do what he wants to do, right? But this is where he earns my nomination for my second pick in this month is stupid. Jimmy Haslam has decided that it is in the best interest of his franchise to first find a head coach and then find a GM who fits that head coach.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God.
And now this is contrary to almost how it's always been done in football, where you sign a GM who is in charge of everything and then have him pick his coach. This is just absurdity at its finest to me in the NFL world.
It's backwards and illogical.
Yes, absolutely, and it makes no sense to me. So my pick is Jimmy Haslam. Actually, hold on, let me get this right. James Arthur Haslam III.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we're going to go full name. James Arthur Haslam III. I'll keep mine a little bit shorter because we talked a while on those other ones. Just blatantly stupid. Picking a head coach for a GM is just dumb. D-U-M, dumb.
Yeah, simple enough. Nice spelling with that, too, by the way.
I appreciate that, yeah.
So we had Brent Bonfuller choose the winner, and the winner of this month in Stupid is, of course, the affluenza teen Ethan Couch and his mom, Tanya Couch. One of them is in the U.S., the other is not, but they're both in jail. Gotta love it. Oh, man. I certainly hope I never have to hear a story about those people ever again, but I probably will. You never know. That concludes our special podcast with Doug Lowery, part of the Delay of Game podcast special guest work. Doug, always a pleasure, my friend. Well done, and looking forward to what you have in store for next month. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, hopefully I can get back on with you guys before then. Or hopefully me and Johnny can start up our podcast.
Yeah. Before we let you go, do tell any new news on your guys' podcast. Anything?
Johnny and I, we work for the same company, and we have bases out of different places here in northeast Nebraska. Originally, it was thought that John was going to be headed up to live in Norfolk and work out of Norfolk, Nebraska, which is much closer to where I am in Wayne. He is actually now in Columbus because we had an opening there that needed to be filled a little bit more urgently than in Norfolk. And so we are about 45 minutes further than we were going to be. And so we're trying to figure out how we're going to make that work. But we're going to figure something out, and we got to find some free time for both of us because we are both very busy folks reporting the news up here in northeast Nebraska.
Oh,
so,
of course.
It's currently still in the building phase and the figuring, the tooling it out phase and figuring out how we can make it work. But it will be happening. I can put assurance on that. We will be figuring something out where him and I will be discussing music and sports and politics and whatever we choose to that week, we will be podcasting out to the world. Of course, we will do our best to have guests on, although me and John were usually better. Him and I just going at it. So we will keep you updated, but hopefully I will hear from you sooner rather than later, Mr. Swanigan, and we can talk all sorts of different topics yet again.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Doug Lowery, reporter in Northeast Nebraska. Doug, thanks for joining us here on Guest Work, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Always, brother. Always. Be good.
Will do. Doug Lowery, and thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to check out our regular podcast. That is on our Facebook page, our Twitter page, and, of course, our website, the Delay of Game podcast.wordpress.com. I almost said the route, but we're not there anymore. We are now back at Delay of Game. Be sure to check out the regular show, and, of course, this as well. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next week here on Delay of Game. 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 Week here on Delay.